Hi, everybody. Welcome to Club Solutions Leadership Viewpoint. My name is Ralph Reyes, and I'm here today with Eric Schmitz of California Athletic Clubs. Welcome, Eric.
Hey Ralph, how's it going?
Good, good. Great to see you. Thank you for doing this. We've been friends for a long time,
Yep.
so really appreciate the opportunity to pick your brain. I know you spend a lot of time working in leadership, working on culture. You've studied it, so you're a great person for me to be able to talk to about this. But let's create a
Sounds
little
good. Yeah.
context for everybody and tell us a little bit about California Athletic Clubs and kind of who you are. And then I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit more about you.
Awesome. Okay, so California Athletic Clubs is a health club ownership management company that was formed in February of 2011, sort of as a result of culture. And I'll talk about that today, like how it all came to be. We've grown to 7 locations, 6 in California and 1 in Utah. And they would be sort of like the typical, multi-purpose swim, tennis, and fitness clubs. Being in California, we're lucky that so much of our stuff is outside and we get to enjoy the good weather. One unusual thing is our corporate office is in Santa Barbara, but we don't have any clubs in Santa Barbara, so that's sort of unique. We range all the way from we do Westlake, Ojai, Avila Bay, Paso Robles, Santa Cruz, and then one up in the Bay Area by you, sort of up on the top of Oakland, overlooking like from the Hill Swim and Tennis Club, you can see Mount Diablo from the pool, the 20 mile view. So they're all like outdoor, beautiful properties that just the members really enjoy using.
Yeah. I think your properties are unique in that they're very, very community based, very
Totally. Yeah.
neighborhood
Yeah.
centric, right? And very vacation sort of destination oriented. I've had the opportunity to come to a couple of your clubs. It's funny, I was coming to see you in Santa Barbara and asked you if you could hook me up at
Yeah.
one of your clubs to work out. And I was like, we don't have a club in Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
So yeah, I learned that one the hard way.
Mm.
But yeah, beautiful, beautiful clubs, a lot of outdoor space. I'm sure we'll get to that a little bit more. Tell us a little bit about you. How long have you been president and you're kind of your back?
So I've been president since the inception of the creation of California Athletic Clubs, but I sort of like you, I've worked in the industry literally 36 years. Believe it or not, July 4th of this year was my 36th year in this industry. I went to University of Wisconsin-Madison. I studied exercise physiology, moved out to Santa Barbara that summer to do triathlons. I was super into triathlons. That's right when it was getting huge out here. So moved out, started working in maybe 3 different clubs at that time in Santa Barbara, and then worked my way up to sort of personal training director, late 80s, early 90s. That's when the personal training field was really starting, really growing quickly
Mhm.
at a club called the Santa Barbara Athletic Club, and worked there as fitness director and general manager, and then just sort of moved up into this position of leadership. And it's really great to be able to know so much about the industry. I literally have done everything, and be able to mentor sort of like the next generation about keeping it authentic and of being of service. Like that's a huge one for us. And, to your point earlier, we brand our clubs locally to the city itself, like Westlake Athletic Club, Ojai Valley Athletic Club. We're not, California Athletic Clubs, Westlake. We really want to try to keep that local feel. As we've acquired these, we really felt that that was like super valuable to the existing membership. And that's really, it's sort of odd, but it's actually really played out well over the years to keep it like super local.
Yeah. Do you have boards, resident boards, or do you have member boards in the different
Um,
facilities?
they're somewhat informal. We don't have any major formal boards. And one of the things that we use for feedback is we're like big time into MXM. We've been using it forever. And that is such a great way to get feedback from tons of different members, sort of not just like a limited board. So I think that's probably the best way. And we'll have, like the traditional suggestion box and so forth, but we're really getting a lot of daily input. I get to look at all 7 of them every day, to see how things are going. And you can learn a lot about your culture or how it's really playing out from a tool like that, right? We'll have, this is what we are, here's our values, here's the behaviors that all the employees should be, going through. But then when you see it real time from the members, it's really good feedback for anybody. But for someone in my position, it's really helpful to see, like, is this sort of brainstorming creative culture actually happening in the
Mhm.
club?
Yeah, so it ends up being a
Mm.
checkpoint against your culture and
Right. Yeah.
principles.
Yeah.
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 So I want to give you a chance for a little bit of a brag here because I know you guys always score really well on MXM. So give me one of your high points for MXM.
So we're really lucky and fortunate that the teams at 2 of our clubs, the Westlake Athletic Club and the Avila Bay Athletic Club and Spa, are 4-time winners of the 5 nines or location of excellence throughout all of MXM. So they are doing an amazing job. And what's really interesting, like the managers at those clubs are like super like local, super authentic, and really great and caring leaders. So they're like a great representation of our values. I mean, it's a very difficult award to win. So I'm like super proud of them for doing that in like 4 years. I mean, I think they didn't do it during COVID that year. I don't think MXM gave it, but the years are on that they've won it. So it's pretty cool.
Well, and that's the interesting thing too, right? Is that your clubs have always done really well, and it's not because they're trying to get a good score. They're
Mm,
doing the right things that result in good scores. And I think
right,
sometimes people get hung up in like, well, what do I got to do to get you into a 9? And we've all been hit with those surveys like, you're going to get a survey, please give me a good score.
right,
That's not the point, right? And I
right.
think you guys have done an awesome job of doing the right things to get the scores.
Right. And it actually, it sort of came down to like very clearly defining the behaviors that we want everyone to partake in, that sort of, and we'll get to this, we have these, this values blueprint thing we'll talk about, but that's sort of where we sort of, it seems like common sense, but as you get, younger employees, new employees, it's really good to reiterate, okay, like, how do we do things around here? And like, what does that really mean? And to your point, as you do that, then, you're going to see those results that you want, either, increased business or, better results from surveys.
Well, that's great. Let's use that
Yeah.
as our transition because we wanted to talk about culture. And, we loosely define culture is the company's core values, beliefs, and mission tied against or compared against the behaviors of the team, right? And
Right.
that's how we look at how well we're doing the culture. You started talking about that, being able to use MXM for that. But first, let's just start with how would you describe the culture? And if I'm just going to call it CDC, if that's okay,
Yeah.
and then CAC. I'm sorry.
CAC, no, it's okay.
Yeah, don't
Yeah.
call it
CDC
CDC.
now.
CAC. That'd be the wrong
Mhm.
name. So how would you describe the culture, Eric? And then let's talk about some of the things you do to reinforce the right behaviors to get to the culture.
Yeah, so I think for us, we sort of created the culture when we created the company in 2011 based on sort of changes that happened prior to that with some of the clubs. So we just really define like what are we doing? How do we want to be of service, right? Like if you break down our values and the behaviors, it's always being of service. And once you sort of have that defined, and it is unique to each company, not each location, we're consistent across the board, and that you really want to try to over communicate that. And most importantly, have the leadership teams within the clubs be like quintessential role models for that. So, one of the simple things that we've done, and I know a lot of clubs have done this, but we created this little blueprint that we call the customer service blueprint, as well as sort of the core one is our values blueprint. And in there, we'll list all of our values, which is fine. Most values that companies have are somewhat, common sense, not rocket science, but getting down to like those behaviors. And we'll do this during onboarding. We'll do this throughout the trainings that we have. We'll acknowledge certain employees if they're a big representation of the value. So it's clearly defining it. That would be probably the most important thing in regards to, values, mission, and all that stuff. And then constantly communicating it and then constantly reinforcing it. So it's sort of like sales, like it never ends. Housekeeping never ends. Building culture never ends. And if you have a good sort of system of doing that, you'll find that the employees that don't have a values match or don't have a culture match, they sort of weed themselves out and things happen where you're just like, this isn't working. Maybe we should be looking for other opportunities. So clearly defining it in something that's written, obviously onboarding all the new people with it, consistently train on it, and then most importantly, leadership teams within the clubs, like that's just who they are, right? That's who they are. That's how they operate. And so frontline staff and staff that turns over can just really see like it all comes down to like, this is how we do things around here. And, it can be subtle differences between organizations, but it's super important that it's clear to all the staff.
Yeah. So when you say that's who they are, I think that's probably kind of the key, right?
Right.
You've hired the right people that it is part of who they are. They're not acting out these things. They're living them. That's who they are, which makes it easier for them to spot lookalikes to them when they hire.
Exactly.
Right. And then the people that don't fit stick out, right? Quite a
Big
bit.
time, right? And again, it seems like common sense, but to see it actually play out in the workplace is interesting, but it always holds true. And right, that key is getting those upper level managers do their and this is everyone's sort of goal for work. Like, do your personal values match the values of your employer, right? And it seems simple, but when that works, like so many issues, challenges, problems that might come up with HR or something like that, just they don't even come up because, like you said, that's just who they are.
Yeah. So let's go into a little more to help people. Let's go into a little more of the specifics of how you kind of keep that energized because you've been doing this a lot of years. I'm sure your general manager has been doing a lot of years. You get tired of reading the card, right? So you got to keep that energy up. So I'm sure you've come up with some creative ways over the years in order to do that.
Yeah, so obviously with training, we're big on that. We have like trainings in our the software that we use for payroll that people have to go through. We'll give like I'll go around to each club annually and give our sort of custom excellence and customer service award. Um, they'll have like the values and the behaviors posted in the manager's room. They'll like call out those, like this is a really good effective thing to do in what we have all calls, so all the employees to get together, a little bit different for each club, some more frequently, some not as frequent, but they will, when all the staff is there, do a call out. Jimmy, there was an opportunity for Jimmy not to show integrity, but he really did show integrity by returning this item that he found out by the pool. And so they'll call each other out. And like that, is simple as that is, that's super powerful, especially for younger staff people who are like, wait, what am I doing here? It's my first job, I'm at the front desk. So all the opportunities within meetings to call out the behaviors that you want and reinforce them. And you could do that in many different ways, is super powerful.
Right. Yeah. And probably whatever's authentic to the organization.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And you guys do it your way. And I think that's so much is not having to necessarily police the negative, but really overemphasize the positive and just spot people doing stuff right and highlighting them.
Totally, exactly.
Yeah.
And we do like part of our part of our hiring process, we use a tool for certain positions called Workforce Interactive, which can also, and there's so many different assessments that you can do that. You can do, you're the working genius one, but having a tool like that also is helpful, because, going through the hiring process, can be difficult at first if you don't have a lot of experience trying to find out, what is this person really like, especially nowadays, because you're getting so many candidates interviewing, but then a lot of times it doesn't work out. So having some type of tool is helpful. And I guess the other thing for us is more of a team building thing is we've done all the, Lencioni books, we've done all that stuff. Having organization in the culture and having resources and tools to use for different levels within your organization is important. And that covers it so well, all the publications and with the table group things is really, we're really aligned with that, as already, but yeah, we're really on page with all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Just so people fill in the blanks. I went out to Eric and works with Eric's team and did the 6 types of working genius with his team. And that was a lot of fun to be able to spend the afternoon with you guys. So let's talk about, like, you have a lot of outdoor stuff. So I think you do probably a lot of summer hiring, right? So trying to maintain that culture, even with your summer hires, probably, heightens the skill level just a little bit.
Yeah. So in the summer, you're right. Like seasonally, there's tons of camp, swim lesson, lifeguards. So, we're a little bit different, I think, than the standard sort of club within our industry, in that, like, our busy time, like we're in we're in the busy time right now. May, June, July, August are our crazy time. So that's sort of when, the managers really have to step up, the department heads, we're corporate office, general manager, department head, frontline, those department heads need to be organized, need to be training, need to be there, need to not take huge summer vacations, because that's also when something challenging can happen from a safety standpoint, if you have all these new people and there's tons of kids around. So, onboarding them as early as possible, having them meet with their, department head as much as possible prior to the season is really helpful.
Yeah, and I imagine having seasoned department heads, right? Where you've had department heads that have been there multiple years.
Yep.
That makes it easier to bring staff back. So now you've got the kid that came back from college a couple years. That makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Just having that continuity of culture from your department head level, I'm sure that's part of the cost of turnover sometimes we don't think about, is like when we lose that line, right? What happens to culture when now that person is hiring, temporary help or whatever, and they're not as linked into it?
Totally. And a good sign of your culture is how long are you retaining those key people? And right, to your point, like that makes such a huge difference for them, in many things, but seasonally, they got it. They know what's going on. It's not as big of an issue. And like, yeah, some of our clubs, I would think we have GMs and our department heads that have been there like over 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's nice, some of the few programs that really marginalize well for us in the clubs are camps and group lessons. And, so it's for some clubs, that 2-3 months, 2.5 months of summer can be a significant
Oh yeah, you got to be
contribution.
all in.
Yeah.
Totally.
So it's important that you don't miss it by, the constant turnover.
Right. Exactly.
So going back to culture, just a little bit more to tie it up, Eric. So have you had to make some tough decisions, maybe with people or with decisions where you put culture first before maybe profit or some other thing, but you said, no, culture's so important. Do you have any examples of something maybe like that?
I think what we've found, or what I've found, said a little bit about already, in that if there's a staff person, even being a key staff person, that is not in alignment with the culture, it usually works out to where they end up leaving, right? They can see the cards on the wall, their coworkers see the cards on the wall, and that's happened. Not that often, right? Because if you get them on the front end and they fit, it works. But I would say that. And then also another thing that's been very useful for the GMs that I've sort of coached them on would be, everyone should have a little like guide about what their values are. And when a decision comes up, and if you're torn with a decision, literally go in your office, shut the door, don't be distracted, and literally look at this. Like, this is what we're about. Because it can be very powerful in getting past a hard decision or helping you make a decision by not getting, not having to be too emotional by reading through it. And that's really helped them a lot, making, tough decisions either about a member or about a program or about employees. So just following that clearly defined set of values and behaviors, and that, like, we're sticking to that.
Yeah, and that's really, I think, really powerful too, in that that manager doesn't have to worry about being second guessed by
Right.
you or somebody on the
Right.
executive team, because this is what we agreed upon would be our sort of our litmus test of how we decide.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure that it gives them a lot of confidence to make decisions.
And it seems simple, but it's really powerful. Yeah. And again, that's different at each organizations are going to be different in regards to that.
Okay, so I know you've done a lot of work with five dysfunctions as a team and Matt Lencioni. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit, and in returns or in regards to trust and conflict. So let's start with trust, because that's the foundational element of everything. And I don't know if you saw the article in Harvard Business Review, the last edition. They have an article on trust. I'll send it to you after.
Oh, cool.
And for everybody watching, it's really good, because they sort of take the Lencioni pyramid, the trust. They almost, like, if you were to zoom in and like get all the detail, they do a really nice job of like defining trust in a very, very explicit manner. So, but let's talk about how you've been able to build trust, and how you've used maybe some of those materials of building trust within your team.
So for me, I automatically default to 100% trust and respect of the GMs that I've hired. Because if you start there, obviously, you learn in the hiring process, like, is that somewhat warranted? But if you start there, and if you give, the GMs the autonomy, and if you trust them, there's nothing that's come up in all my years of working that has led astray to that. Obviously, you have to set guardrails on what they're doing, what they're supposed to be doing, but trusting that they'll have, the business's best interests at heart is totally the foundation of success in a culture. I can't overstate that enough. Obviously, sometimes things are going to come up and they are going to make mistakes, and you might need to reset those guide rails, but completely trusting them is so powerful, because then that allows them to feel comfortable to be who they are and to manage a little bit differently than I might manage, or that their co GMs might manage. So obviously it's the base of the pyramid, but it's the most powerful thing
So
that you can do.
how about building trust with you, so they trust you? How have you done that?
I think, giving them the opportunities to grow, right? Giving them the opportunities to implement their ideas, realize that I will make mistakes, and, admitting to that, I made a mistake on certain things. But I think probably, that Start With Why, Simon Sinek book, the, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, like having everything be in those three will be dramatically help grow their trust in me. Like, I would say, like, giving them as much autonomy as I can, and having respect and confidence that they'll make the right decisions has led them to trust me, I think.
So, and the GMs report directly to you, correct?
Correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
So, and how much interaction, how often are you meeting with them?
So what I'll do is, on a weekly basis, we'll have a one-on-one with a real set agenda that they'll like fill out before, and we'll have, an hour meeting about everything, right? Like safety, how are the programs going, all the operational things. As well as I'll travel to the clubs based on projects happening, based on, seasonally when I need to be there. We'll also, do like retreats with the managers. We've gone on, some weekend retreats. We've done a bunch of pickleball things. Um, so I think having that weekly one-on-one with structure, in that all the agenda items need to be filled out, is super helpful. Even if I'm not in the club, like getting that rhythm
Right.
is really helpful.
Yeah. And I imagine there's some soft conversation in
Oh,
there
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as
Yeah,
well
totally, yeah.
that you're, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, maybe 20 minutes of the meeting is agenda items, then the rest of it is catching up with family, what's going on, how is your fishing trip, Eric? All that stuff. Yeah.
All right, great. So then let's talk about conflict. And I did the seminar with your team,
Right.
and I could see that there was really good interaction amongst the team. People were very comfortable with speaking their minds, and everyone was able to contribute on a very equal basis.
Mhm.
So you've talked about it a lot, but maybe is there something different that you've done to really sort of bring out the ability for people to disagree and to create good, healthy conflict with the team?
I think it's asking them questions about what they think that how things should go. My personality is not one that will like directly go to conflict. In life, right? Everyone's strength is also their weakness. I'm too nice, right? And they don't take advantage of that. But being open, being humble, admitting when you make mistakes, and really trusting that, hey, they're the local on-site leader. They know the local community. What's going to be best for the business. I think that sort of foundation has worked well. Well, they're going to say their mind, and we'll talk about it. And sometimes, we don't end up doing it, but most often we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting too, because you guys are a collection of clubs that create a company rather than a
Mhm.
brand, that you're trying to get these sort of brand standards hammered down,
Right.
which makes, I think, the autonomy a little bit easier, right? And it makes it a little bit nicer because you have structured it in a way where, no, I want you to be sort of indigenous in your community and be able to reflect what is happening. And this program in Ojai may not work in Santa Cruz.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
they love that. Yeah. They
yeah, I
really
would
like
imagine,
that.
I
Mhm.
would think so too. And I would think that lends itself to more discussion about, hey, people I think would be more open to hearing about what these other ideas are because it's not being forced on me.
Right.
It's working here and I can opt in if I feel like it works for my community.
Right. Right. Because the locations are different, the community is different. Like at Westlake, we have way more tennis courts, so we converted more of them to pickleball. And the population is pretty dense there, so it's like been just unbelievably successful. And they have a really great pickleball director. And in June, we were up in Paso, and we had like a department head retreat with all the department heads for pickleball, and the pickleball director at Westlake was there helping and everything. So they were excited to listen to him and learn from him. So again, that the uniqueness and the differences, at first you might think it's a weakness, but I really think it's a strength for us.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It's just really a matter of execution, right?
Mhm.
Because I think in some ways it makes sense. And in other ways, and I think because of the way you are, I think it's really smart that you guys haven't tried to create a brand standard that everybody has to fit into
Right,
because of who you are.
right. Yeah, it would be
Yeah.
difficult. And right, they're so unique, the locations are.
So how many pickleball courts are you guys up to now?
Let's see. I think like 18 or 20, yeah. So
18.
again, to COVID like saved tennis too. I mean, there's a lot of demand for tennis. So like that's been a challenge to convert as many. And also it leads to parking issues too, right? If you have tons of pickleball, you're going to get, 4 times the amount of parking. So, but I just see, pickleball continuing to grow. It's such a low barrier to entry. It's community based. It's fun. It totally, checks all the boxes for what like clubs like ours do. I mean,
Yeah.
yes. I just hope it doesn't get too corporatized because you see how much growth there is with it's going to be interesting to see how it was sort of like the bowling alleys for you and I when we were young, right? Like the just recreational activities that were fun.
Well, and what's really interesting about pickleball is you play doubles and four people, but you can show up as a single
Mhm.
versus tennis. Tennis, we kind of grew up because I grew up playing
Yeah,
tennis and
yeah,
you put your foursome together. You're making tennis reservations, you had to have your four people so you can make your tennis reservation, right? And then, but pickleball, you basically just show up and then everybody rotates,
yeah.
which is kind of a weird deal if you're coming from tennis, but
Right. Yeah, it's
totally,
different. Yeah.
it totally works as far as, being inclusive and bringing people in.
And getting more people active. Yeah, it's very different from tennis that way. Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
different. And I
So is,
think as part of our goal of our industry to get more people active, it's like a no-brainer.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
All right. Well, great. Well, let's keep going here. Anything else on conflict that you wanted to mention?
It just like it's inevitable that it's going to happen. It doesn't have to be too dramatic. I think if both people really respect each other, that can really help it get resolved quickly. And if the parties are acting professionally, which, we would assume is going to happen, sometimes it doesn't, and
It
that can
doesn't
lead to
always.
bad conflict, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Focusing on the issue, right?
yeah.
Not the individual. And yeah, I know you guys do all that stuff. All right. So let's talk about just one more thing and then we'll kind of wrap up. But for people who maybe feel like their culture isn't in the best place and
Mhm.
want to start somewhere, where would you suggest people start?
What I would do is there's a really great book that I used when we were sort of really deep in creating our culture in the summer of 2011. And it's a book called Built on Values, and the author is Ann Rhodes. And it takes you through a lot of the steps in the question that you just asked. That's a super good resource, but also the biggest thing is just clarity, right? Like,
Hmm.
what does it mean when I say this is how we do things around here, right? Um, and there's also debates like should culture be top down or should it be like bottom up? I think it's clearly writing your values, having the behaviors associated with those values, writing a mission statement, writing your vision statement, and then can have a tagline. Those can be so like intermixed, but the biggest thing is just to um, make sure that you prioritize it and that you understand that you can have the latest, greatest, equipment. You could have a great facility, but the organization's not going to reach its highest potential unless you focus big time on the culture, right? It's a process that never ends. But to get started, um, there's many different online resources, books to go through like a values, assessment for organization. But the clearer you can define it, the more effective it can be, because then there can be coaching opportunities that come up when it's not happening. And yeah, it's a process, but you have to start. And I think being clear and, again, there's many different ways you can do it, but
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
yeah,
sometimes people think, oh, it's kind of that woo-woo-y, kumbaya stuff. But I think you've been able to show there's a very clear return on investment
totally. Yeah.
to this, and the measurable is your MXM scores
Oh,
and
oh,
your and
totally.
your
Yeah.
and your retention numbers, and those types of things are make it very easy to quantify the time spent and money spent on building culture.
Yeah, like two out of our 7 clubs, we have like wait lists. Like one, our club in Santa Cruz has like a 3-year wait list. So, I mean, it's a mix of a lot of things, but culture is sort of like on top of, location, facility, staff program. It's the one that connects all of them.
Yeah, and I think you're one of the best kept club company secrets out there, Eric, because you guys have done such a great job and you do so many great things. So people can go to the California Athletic Club website, right?
Yeah,
To
it's
see.
caclubs.com is the website. And then
Yeah.
from there it branches off, into all the locations.
Yeah, because you do have some very unique, like I think Santa Cruz, the reason why there's a 3-year waiting list partly is because you're just like on the top of a hillside, and
Right.
there's just because people are going to naturally think, well, why don't they add on? Why don't they, right? You just
We
can't.
can't. The county won't let us, right? Yeah, we would love to, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, great. Any final words? Any
Yeah,
final quote or anything?
I would say, be it you're new to this industry, be it you've been here a long time, we really have to remember that while we're unique and everything, like ultimately, like in your position, whatever it may be, are you of service,
Mm.
right? Are you a person of service? Are you wired to serve? That can be, staff if you're just interfacing with the staff. It could be members. But if you in a leadership position are that way, that's like super powerful because the trickle down of that is amazing, right? That it's not about you, it's about your team and what you're doing to take care of your team, to make sure that they're successful and that they're growing. So that would be one thing. And then the other thing would be, with, healthcare where it is and, the sort of rise of biohacking and health span, like I'm like really optimistic, and anyone in this industry should be optimistic about the future of our industry because so much of what is upticking in healthcare is stuff that we've done since, Ralph and I started, for like 40 years. So, and it's only going to grow in the, and all the work that Liz is doing and Health and Fitness Association, it's only going to grow within the viewpoint of society, like how important we are. So very optimistic about the future of our industry. But at the same time, historically, high-end leaders, it's sort of been difficult for them to have a career within this field. So, you can do it. You just need to make sure that you're, making the right choices, growing as a person, never, stop growing. But this industry, because we can affect so many lives, is an unbelievable industry to be in.
Awesome. Eric, you've set such a great example for
Oh,
your
thanks.
team and the industry and everybody that's around you. Yeah, and you live what you just said. So I appreciate so much you taking the time and sharing your wisdom and your experience with us today. So
Oh, no
thank you.
problem.
All right.
Alrighty, Ralph. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Take care.
Alrighty, take care.